our 2023 preview for the Dallas Cowboys. This team played the hits last year in the playoffs, boy. Another super talented team, another trip to the playoffs, another devastating final game that included an embarrassing, we're going to talk about this for a long time moment that is just burned into our brains. 2 years ago, it was the Dak slide and non-spike at the end of the game. Last year, it was the Zeke at center play where he got absolutely bulldozed on the final play of the game. And those moments, obviously, we talk about them ad nauseum with this team. The playoff failings, them falling short despite all the talent that they have. At times, I feel like it can lead us to forget how much talent they have and just how good they are top to bottom. But unless they do it in January and unless they can win a playoff game, unless they can make one of these little runs, none of that roster talent, none of that depth. I think Jerry said this week, like, this is the deepest team I think we've had. Well, now you got to do it because it doesn't matter. They don't hand out rings for being the deepest team in August. Even if I'm excited about this team, I can understand some of the underlying frustration and scrutiny that has come with the end over the last couple of years.
Give as many plus players as you want, as long as you got to win those games at the end of the season. I mean, that's all anyone remembers. I mean, no one remembers the week before, even when Dak had the game in the divisional round and everything was falling apart. The week before against Tampa, shredding everybody, shredding the Bucs defense. And it's like, that doesn't matter because it wasn't the last game.
It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
With this team, it doesn't matter.
No,
and
it doesn't. That's the expectations that they have. No, especially not with Dak. But this is the expectations that this franchise has. It's on purpose. It's like they want this. And I think Jerry said, like you said, we both all are going to say they have depth, they have talent. But again, it just has to result in a W. That's it. W at the end of the season.
Before we get into the offense and talk about Kellen Moore and the changeover there, I wanted to ask you about the Trey Lance trade. We haven't really had a chance to discuss it at all on any of the shows that we've been doing. What do you make of Dallas being the team that was willing to make that sort of play for Trey Lance?
My actual first thought was Dak injury insurance. They think they're a competing team, and why not get a wild card back at the quarterback position that can maybe help us get through a game?
That's exactly what Jerry Jones said. I think this week when asked about the trade is that quarterbacks get hurt and you just never you can never have enough of them in this league. And I honestly don't think it's the worst argument.
Especially
we celebrate. Team. Yeah. And even any team, I think we've celebrated the Eagles for being proactive about making sure they have enough quarterbacks in the building because you never know what's going to happen. And I don't think it's a bad way to think about it. He's got 2 cheap years left on his deal. It was a 4th round pick. Teams use backup quarterbacks with 4th round picks.
Ian's Book was a 4th round pick. Matt Corral was a 3rd round pick and just got cut. Bailey Zappi was a 4th round pick and just got cut.
Done.
That's it.
So
that's just
it's expensive. He's getting paid a decent amount of money to be a 4th round pick and to be a backup. But I can understand the thought and just saying we need to make our quarterback room better. It's not giving up that much to do it. The cynical look is that maybe it's a Dak leverage play when they get the contract offseason, whatever. But I don't need to go down that.
I know that I don't want to even cross that bridge. It's like obviously this is the Dak's the guy this year, and I think that they're a year-to-year team, and that's how I've pictured Jerry. He's like, he's going to take care of his guys. And I think he's just taking a bet on this. And again, it's just the injury insurance. Dak missed 4 games last year, a game the year before. Remember the Pats game? He got he threw the touchdown to CD and got hurt, and then he was kind of injured for the next 6-ish weeks. The year before, he only played 5 games. That's the last 3 seasons. He's dealt with a real injury. So
it's a great point.
I think, ironically, you're going to Trey Lance as injury insurance, but it's you got to find it everywhere. He's got talent. He still has talent.
Biggest question about the Dallas Cowboys offense this season. What do you got for me?
Okay. I don't even know. I think the obvious question is what a Schottenheimer and Mike McCarthy offense is going to look like in 2023, but I'm going to just have a statement first. I'm going to give this 3 weeks. I want to see this. I'm going to give this not even a couple games. I'm going to give it 3. I won't even get it out. This
reminds me of me in 2019. It's like, I'm only going to have 3 beers tonight. I'm only going to have 3. That's it. And then I'm putting a limit on myself. Anytime you're having that conversation with yourself in advance, that's never going to go well.
Cut me off after that 3rd interception in the 3rd game. Cut me off. No, this is because even just in preseason, I'm like, this looks the same. It's the same passing attack as with Kellen Moore and everything. And I'm just cracking up because it's like Mike McCarthy said, we're going to run the ball. Kellen likes to get cute and throw the ball. When I think he meant by that comment, I'm hoping he meant by that comment is that, sometimes Kellen could they have 50 plays on the game plan that there's probably hundreds. He wanted to call all 50 as opposed to maybe spamming the same plays over and over. And I would say sometimes he would get too cute, but running the ball, they were 6th in design run rate. First and second down.
And Mike McCarthy famously did not run the ball the last time that he was an offensive coordinator. The Packers were the pass heaviest team in football for nearly a decade when he was their play caller.
So I think that's what he meant. That's what I'm hoping, is that he meant he got too cute with trying to hit every play call, as opposed to they weren't even good at it. They were 26th in efficiency. That was in between the Commanders and the Rams. How much did we make fun of the Rams running game last year?
Part of that was the amount of workload that the other running back got last season. Yeah, Tony Pollard was 12th in EPA per carry last year. Zeke was 46th out of backs with at least 100 carries. So the running game, just by virtue of giving the ball to Tony Pollard more, may be more efficient. But I also have questions about that. He got 38% of his career carries last year with stepping into that role, and he broke his leg at the end of the season. So that's one of the lingering. I know that's a fluke injury, but this is still a guy who has never been used at that sort of clip before. And what they have for depth is a guy who's 5'6". So
it's the running back spot is a little iffy. I like the offensive line, but again, that's going to be a big concern, is injury health there. But it's not like they added to that. So there is, same-ish offense, same running backs, actually probably a little lesser. And then, the offensive line's the same. So it's kind of like, okay, so
the offensive line coach, I think Mike Solari is there now for Joe Philbin. So they've made some tweaks, but it
kind of feels samey.
Yeah, it does. I think that's what they wanted. Is there anything from a structural perspective that you think may be different in a Mike McCarthy world that you've either noticed in the preseason or based on Mike McCarthy's history would lead you to believe?
I think so. Why I want to talk about why they weren't very efficient in the run game is because Dak was so efficient in the pass game on first and second down. He was top 5 on first and second down passing efficiency. He's brutally efficient. That's the term I always like to use. So this is one of the few offenses. I usually dog quick game. I usually just don't like it. This is a team that can thrive in that with quick game to balance out the run game. It's true. It's almost West Coast-ish, old school West Coast. That's the throw.
Mike McCarthy's ears, baby.
I know. And now I'm kind of seeing what maybe it's going to go on here. So might be some spacing, might be some stick, might be some slant flat. So you might see a little bit of that, but then bouncing it with traditional 5-step, 7-step. They're going to do a little bit of everything. I think that's what I see from this offense. But I feel no matter what, they're going to be fine on 3rd and 4th down. Did you know Dak? The Cowboys have been top 10 on 3rd down rate every year of Dak's been starting, except for the year that he missed the whole season.
That's not surprising.
Or 5 games, or he played 5 games, but whatever. But most of the season, so they've been top 10 every year. It's like that's a Dak stat, and they said different centers, so it wasn't just even Travis Frederick. Now they have Biotish, so it's like 3rd and 4th down, they're gonna be fine. It's figuring out this 1st and 2nd down equation between quick game, normal drop back, and their run game, because they're gonna have to figure out the balance of it.
A couple other deficiencies that this offense had last year and addressing why that might be different. Obviously, the 17 interceptions and the Dak Prescott interception machine has been done to depth.
Oh my goodness.
Dak Prescott, according to Pro Football Focus, had 10 or 20 turnover-worthy plays last year. 20. It led to 17 interceptions. His turnover-worthy play rate, if you look at it last season, I think it was like 3.7%. Okay. Over the last 4 years, it has never gone outside of between 3.2% and 3.7. It's the same. He took the same amount of chances. It was the same quarterback as he was over the last 3 years that he was last year. He just got unlucky. This happens. We've seen this happen before. So
he tries shit. Quarterbacks that try shit get punished.
He didn't try any more shit last year than he did for the rest of his life. And he was a pretty turnover-averse player before that. So I'm not concerned about that at all. The one thing that I really do think by the end of the year was this big glaring problem. They needed another pass catcher. They needed another weapon. You could feel it in the Niners game so deeply that they just needed another threat in the passing game. And I think that's partially because Gallup was still close enough to the ACL where he didn't look the same. But going out and getting Brandon Cooks and having Michael Gallup now be a year and a half removed from that ACL injury, I just feel so much better about the state of their pass catchers now than I did by the end of last season, or really at any point last season.
I love it. I love how their pass catchers.
Cooks is just a good fucking player, man. He's just a good player.
Cooks and Lamb that's awesome. And Gallup's the traditional X. Like the skill sets make sense, just everything. I love it. And then behind them, they got Turpin's a gadget guy, and then Jalen Tolbert had a nice preseason. Receiver, this is the best I felt about this receiver room in a while. It's not as much as I like Noah Brown's dirty work play, it's like you don't want a lot of
Noah
Brown
Brown is
snaps.
an athletic football show favorite, not a divisional playoff favorite. And I think those are the types of guys they need to be chasing right now.
Yes, exactly. It's not just like a niche favorite. You want the actual guys that can, make $200 million at the box office. So but then on top of it, I love the tight ends. I think Jake Ferguson's going to he looks great. I'm a Wisconsin
He's
guy.
a solid player. He's a solid player.
He looks so good as a blocker and a pass catcher. He's going to be a real nice weapon. He's going to step right in for Dalton Schultz. And then the other tight ends they have there, they got a nice group there. Yeah. So the pass catchers are good. Like overall, just really like how they all fit together.
I'm concerned about the offensive line depth. That's the one thing I would throw out there. Yep. They just don't have it.
None.
In years past, they've had interior depth. So last year when Tyron Smith got hurt and Tyler Smith could slide out there, they had a guard they could just throw into the mix. That doesn't exist on this team now. They don't really have any depth outside of their starters that you would feel good about throwing into the mix. And it's not like Tyron Smith has historically stayed healthy. Terrence Steele's coming off of an injury. So if they get a couple dinged up guys along the offensive line, I think this could be a problem in a hurry. And that may seem nitpicky, but when we're talking about teams that are trying to win Super Bowls, I think it's worth pointing out as on the eve of the season.
Top 3 favorite in your conference. You gotta find where could it all come unraveled? What card can we take to pull down the house of cards? That's the number one glaring one on this offense and the team, really.
I 100% agree. Personnel wise, I think it's definitely the biggest question. Biggest question about the defense for you. This is a defense that I picked to be the best defense in football when we did our top 10 defenses show, and I believe you did as well. So I don't think a lot of big questions about the Dallas Cowboys defense.
It's a positive question. I said, how does Dan Quinn unleash these guys? That's really it. I think it's going to be a whole lot of man coverage and a whole lot of heat. Like that's what they did in the preseason. There's an uptick in man again. Remember they did that a couple of years ago. They're back
that's my only concern. We've talked about this. I threw this stat out on the defensive show. They use man on more than a third of their early down snaps in 2021, and they allowed the 4th highest explosive play rate in the league. Last season, they went from about 34% to 20% man on early downs. They were 18th in explosive play rate allowed. So that variance and that volatility took a step down when they started playing less man coverage.
I think is that they have more depth, as Jerry Jones wants to highlight, especially in the DB room. This DB room is awesome.
They kept 6 safeties. It's hilarious. They're a parody of themselves.
It looks like a hockey team, like, the back line, like, the defenders, they go 3 deep. Like that's their third line is like pretty good. Like their second line is great. Like just like the role players are really positive players. Like it's just this weird mixture of guys. I'm going to talk about the front as well, kind of having that vibe too. We talk about this with receivers and the Shanahan line that looks like a basketball room. That's what this DB room feels like. This guy covers the safety. This guy's in the slot. This guy can be in the box, but they can kind of intermix. So I really like it. And I like what they can throw at guys. And just at the front, like Damone Clark is kind of like, there's a little bit of highlight on him. It's like what he can do. He's looked really good this preseason. And we know Leighton Van Der Esch is probably not going to finish the season like healthy. This team likes to live and dime. But having Clark,
because they don't have a lot of linebacker depth.
But what I was going to say is having Clark being okay, or at least okay, like a okay role player, okay starter, is huge because if Van Der Esch gets hurt, or if they want to live in nickel a little bit, if they just want to sprinkle it in and gets heavier looks, it's like they have an answer to that too. So that just makes me interested because those are the question marks I have, but I can kind of see the path and the answers that this team might have. Of course, if everyone stays healthy and it goes to plan.
The one bit of depth I'm interested in outside of linebacker on defense is if they get an outside corner hurt, what happens?
Mm-hmm.
Because Jordan Lewis has historically been a nickel corner. He's still on this roster. And Deron Bland, who was a 5th-round pick last year, played very, very well for them. So does one of those guys potentially slot in for a Trayvon Diggs or a Stephon Gilmore who's getting up there in age if that injury happens? Again, this is nitpicky stuff, but this is the types of things I have on my mind with this team because of where they want to get to.
And if we're bringing up old age corners with the Eagles, if a team wants to live in man coverage with a 33,
a lot to ask.
That's a lot. Yes. And again, they are finding ways to kind of sprinkle in change ups, which you like with Dan Quinn, to cover 2 stuff, and that can kind of save them a little bit. But you're not trading for Gilmore to play cover 2. You're trading them to play outside and man up guys like that. That's his shtick. So, and then up front, of course, is Micah Parsons and
it's terrifying.
Awesome.
I think that there's a chance he just goes nuclear this year.
Mm-hmm.
Just like historic season type stuff, nuclear. I would not be surprised by it at all.
Me either. I mean, just especially that they've narrowed his role, or at least like or they're just really going, nope, you're going forward every single snap. None of the Green Bay Packers game where you're playing Mike linebacker, you're truly a pass rusher. You're truly on the line of scrimmage. It's gonna be bonanza because all their other players are like good. Yeah. Like or potential.
It's the deepest edge rusher group in the entire NFL. I don't even think it's really a conversation. You can make an argument that the Steelers and the Jets, their front overall is as good as this group is, but purely an edge rusher, they go 4 deep.
Because the 49ers took a drop off. So I would say it's it's Jets and Cowboys. I think that's fair. That's very fair.
You got Dante Fowler, who had like a bunch of pressures last year, is third on the depth chart and their edge rusher spots.
I know.
So I feel very good about the defense. Defense is there's always a chance with defense. There, it happens. These defenses that just kind of fall off because you get unlucky or you get a couple injuries in the wrong spot. But I think this group is really deep. We've seen them evolve. We've seen them transform a little bit. I had my questions about them heading into last season. I was not shy about that. They lived on turnovers. They subsisted on turnovers in 2021. And I wondered what they would look like when that didn't happen. The answer is we've made some tweaks. We still got a lot of really good players, and we're going to be just fine. So I've really developed a ton of respect for Dan Quinn in the last couple of years.
I already had a lot of them after working with him.
I've always loved talking to him about football. It's just he's a
energetic guy,
person with a lot of fans around the NFL. Yep. There was a question, in my opinion, about what he would be in this role after what the end looked like in Atlanta. And I think the self-reflection and growth that he's had as a coach over the last couple of years is immensely impressive.
He always leans into speed. He loves speed. I mean, a lot of football coaches do, but this defense feels the most like him. Like he loves boxing. If anyone knows about Dan Quinn, like he loves boxing, loves combat sports. So this just feels like just speed bag. Like that's what this team is.
It's funny that you say that because he's always wearing the mitts in practice, working with.
He loves it. So, I know. You see her. I would go down and work out back when I was like 40 pounds heavier than I am now, believe it or not. And then I was like working out and just be like me and him. He's on the speed bag and it's like backwards hat, headphones in. I was like, that's the head coach. Like, shoot. They always do that. Remember, everyone talks about that. Who would win the head coach like bracket, fighting. When he was a head coach, he'd actually have more of a shot than people realized. But getting back to this defense, you talk about Dante Fowler, then Sam Williams, Dorrance Armstrong on the edge. Like the first round pick, Maisie Smith, has kind of had a slow start this preseason. Guess what? They have Jonathan Hankins that can play in the middle for them. And then Maisie Smith, who could just come down and pass rush down. So, man,
that would be the one thing you'd worry about is the run defense at times. Last year was a little bit questionable. They spent a first round pick on a space eating nose tackle. I think in part because of what they saw Jonathan Hankins do for their run defense last year. But that's the one area maybe if you could chip away at a little bit because they had some weaknesses and they had some issues there against the run last season in stretches.
And then shout out to DeMarcus Lawrence, who's kind of like a star in his own right against the run and the pass. And then Osa Odighizuwa, who's like people are realizing is pretty damn good.
Oh, you're stepping on stuff. Just take it easy.
Am I? I know. Everyone likes him now. Because I say his name, so now I can actually like shout him out a little bit more often.
X Factor for the 2023 Cowboys. Do you have 8 players you want to name again?
No, that's breakout player. I'm going to say O-line health. So I guess 5 players and the run game. That's the X factor. I think keep staying on schedule in the run game is going to be a huge answer that this team has to find. So it's going to be very interesting.
I got Tyron Smith and Stephon Gilmore for very similar reasons. If this team gets 17 games from Tyron Smith and Stephon Gilmore, I would feel very, very good about where the Dallas Cowboys end up at the end of the season. If they get half that from each of them, I feel less good about that. And Gilmore's not been injury prone the way that Tyron Smith has. But again, mid corners in your mid 30s, it's just something to keep an eye on. And depth at those spots.
And at first, when I looked at their line depth, I was like, well, if Tyron Smith gets hurt, Tyler Smith can bump out. No big deal. But then I looked at their guard depth and I'm like,
it's not the way same as it was last year.
Yeah. And they don't have the pedigree. This team usually does a good job of middle round picks, just keep churning. And they just don't have that this year.
Josh Ball, they spent a 4th round pick on him. He just never turned into one of those guys. So they've just missed in that area in a way that they didn't historically.
Don't.
Breakout candidate for the 2023 Cowboys. Who you got for me?
Speaking of hitting on offensive line prospects, though, Tyler Smith. their left guard, who I am predicting is going to be a Pro Bowler this year. That is my bold prediction for this pod. But I just really like his game. He's way further along. I was a big fan of him coming out, but he was way further along as a rookie than I ever expected. He's
to bounce around between positions and be functional in the way that he did.
Functional.
Was really impressive.
He was a plus player at guard, like already. So yeah, Tyler Smith, really like him. But this was a super hard category. Like I had 4 guys I wanted to name. Sam Williams was one, Jake Ferguson was another, and then I think the next one that you're about to say was the other one I was going to throw out there.
One other thing worth mentioning about why they maybe struggled a little bit to run the ball last season is just moving pieces along the offensive line. Guys in and out of the lineup, guys bouncing from one side to the other. So a little bit more stability you would hope would help kind of lift their running game. I'm going with Osa Digizua. He's really flashed. He's in year 3 now, has been a ascending player consistently, got better last year, but I think he has a chance to just be the next guy in that front. You can just kind of see it. He's playing with more strength and I think assertiveness than he was earlier in his career. And that's always fun when you just see the confidence manifest physically in some of these defensive linemen, especially offensive linemen too. I think that's where it does, is just, you can just see the strength kind of come through. They know how to wield it in ways they didn't earlier in their careers. And I think that's kind of the step he seems to be at.
Yeah. It was all flashes before, like you said, it's explosive traits. So like the strength too, it's like, but just using that. Cause he's like, it wasn't like he was like an overwhelming tester or anything. He's one of those guys that plays harder and faster than testing numbers could kind of channel. Yeah. Good player.
What a success for the 2023 Cowboys.
I said making it to the dance, or the Super Bowl, the final dance, not the dance floor, just the final dance. Making the Super Bowl, I think, is obviously the goal for this team.
I said getting to the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
I think they have to get over it. You don't have to take it all the way, but getting over the hump. Can you imagine just the feeling of, I don't know what network it would be on, but Terry Bradshaw handing that trophy to Jerry Jones, and just like what that moment would be like for Cowboys fans to not have that highly embarrassing, highly deflating, devastating moment at the end of the playoffs, just getting to the game, even if you lose it. I have to imagine that moment, that step would just be so comforting, and the weight would just be lifted off so many of those people.
I feel like true Cowboys fans, which is hard because it's a very popular team, but like true fans.
I was very gracious of you. Well done.
Thank you. I didn't want to say the BW word, but I imagine someone born like, from Gen Z, like born in the late 90s, and how they picture the Cowboys compared to someone maybe our age who remembers the 90s Cowboys when they were the bad boys. They were like that was
the last time, man. When they went to the Super Bowl, was the last time.
In the mid-90s. And I've just been thinking about that. It's like I have younger cousins. Like, man, the Cowboys have just been a joke to them for their whole lives. They don't remember them being that super team. So just crazy how these things work as you get older.